Mary walked into the boardroom. In her immaculate business outfit, cut just tightly enough to hint at the figure beneath it, she looked every inch the modern female executive. She was in her early 30s, and her crisp workplace efficiency was tempered occasionally by just a hint of femininity. In the office, anyway. Outside the office, well, that was another matter entirely. She was in a good mood, for this promised to be an excellent board meeting. Profits were up, market share was up. The others had not arrived yet, so she sat down, sorted out her papers, and then eyed up the contents of the picture frames hanging on the panelling of the boardroom walls. Peter, Saul and Mary Ltd, soul brokers, said one. Our mission, to become the leading supplier of souls to the soul refining industry by the end of the second millennium. 3 other frames contained portraits. Mary Maudlin, finance director, read the inscription beneath the first. Her dark eyes looked back out at herself. The second offered Peter Fisher, operations director, and showed a large, round man, smiling, but with disapproving eyebrows. As she turned to consider Saul Tarsus, marketing director, the man himself stepped into the room. "Morning, Mary, darling," said Saul. Saul was tall, thin, and elegantly clothed. Insouciant was his word for his particular style of dressing. Camp was nearer the mark, thought Mary to herself as usual. Saul favoured cravats in place of the more usual tie, and today's was a particularly luminous pink. 8:59 a.m. and 50 seconds, 51, 52, intoned Saul. At the third stroke, Peter will be here, precisely. And indeed here was Peter, exactly on time as usual. He was followed by a small bearded man, dressed in a curiously old-fashioned manner. "Come on, Moses, come on, you're late. Morning all," boomed Peter. "OK, whose turn is it to chair this one? Not mine, I did it last time." "Mine, Peter, remember?" said Mary. "I sent out the agenda, if you recall. OK, item number 1, tablets of the last meeting. Any points?" "Yes," said Peter. "I really must insist that the tablets are issued within 40 days and 40 nights of the previous meeting. It's simply unacceptable for it to be 3 or 4 months." OK, Moses, please try and be more prompt with the tablets of the meetings, will you?" "I expect to see it recorded formally on the tablets," said Peter firmly. Moses nodded, head down, and scratched a note. "Company secretary to issue all tablets within 40 days and 40 nights of board meetings," reinforced Peter. Moses nodded again, while the others winced perceptibly. "I think we've got the point, Saint," muttered Saul. "OK, item number 2, financial report," interjected Mary hastily. "Basically, things are pretty good. Profits for the generation stand at over 25 million credos, and—" "I do hate these new credo things," interrupted Peter. "What was wrong with the good old sestertii, I want to know?" "Peter, you say that every time I present the figures. Since the government took us into the new single currency, it's credos, OK? 7.5382 sestertii to the credo. It's really not that difficult, is it?" said Mary, trying to be patient. "I think the currency is rather beside the point, actually," said Saul, breaking in. "What is the point, then, if it isn't that we're doing really well?" Yes, we're doing really well now, darling, but just look ahead a little. Why are we doing well now?" "The Black Death," said Peter. "Exactly," said Saul. "Fantastic for business right now. Almost more souls than we can conveniently handle. But what about the next generation? Since half the population of our dominant sectors will be dead, they won't be breeding the next generation of souls, will they? There'll be a lot less people, so there'll be fewer people to die, at least in areas where we have the main market share. Other parts of the globe will be doing fine, apparently, but not us stuck in Europe. Oh no, we are going to have a big problem sooner than you think." "Actually, there are more souls than I can conveniently handle at the moment," admitted Peter. "We're having to take on temporary Reaper Call Centre staff. Anyway, Saul, you're right. We've got a problem. What are you going to do about it? How about another direct mail campaign? The last one you did went OK, I seem to remember." "Oh, come off it, Saint darling," replied Saul. "That sort of thing went out with the Dark Ages. Letters to the Corinthians might have been fine in the classical 1st century, but I can hardly see Letters to the Londoners or Letter to the Frankfurters being a success in the medieval age. Most of them can't read, for one thing. No, I thought maybe a schism would be a good thing to go for." "A schism?" asked Mary. "I thought they were rather old-fashioned too." No, this is the perfect moment for a schism, don't you see? As soon as they divide like that, each side has to prove its best by going off and winning new converts for the faith. Just what we need in the forthcoming depressed market. Always works and never goes out of fashion. And we've not had one for nearly 400 years, so there's no danger of customer concept fatigue. So then, Peter, will you organise it? Said Mary. Saul, you'll provide the theological basis as usual, I take it. Yes, yes, boomed Peter. Leave it to me. I know just how to run a schism. I don't think you need bother yourself much, Saul. I can create a basis myself for something as simple as a schism. OK, Moses, take to the tablets that Peter will organise a schism and report back to the next meeting, said Mary. Now, item number 3, forthcoming investors' meeting. Who's coming to this one? Asked Peter. Mrs. Carpenter, as usual, began Mary. Saul groaned softly. And the Pantheon Fund Managers Alliance are sending a representative. Who? Persisted Peter. The guy with the footwear problem. You know, what's his name? Replied Mary. Mercury, you mean? He's just a messenger, said Saul. They always send him to break bad news to us. It's not a good sign. Probably means they've spotted the coming trends too. Anyone from the soul-refiners? Asked Peter. Well, Beelzebub, the chairman of Hell Refining, said he might drop in. He just sits in the corner and smokes all the time, said Peter. It is pretty hot in the soul-refineries, Saint. He just doesn't have time to cool off. Anyway, it's not certain he'll turn up. After all, profits are up, he's getting a good return on his investment, as well as plenty of supplies to his refineries. You know what he's like, only puts in an appearance when things are bad, said Mary. Depends if he can see the evil times ahead. Any of the other refiners? Not heard. Anyhow, I'm planning to simply report to them that profits are up, we're going to pay out an excellent dividend, so they're all getting great returns on their money. What if they ask questions about future trends? Demanded Saul. Well, Peter's schism should be underway by then. He can deal with them, can't you, Peter? Said Mary. Oh, absolutely, just leave it to me, answered Peter. The meeting continued on. And that's about it. Good meeting, I thought, concluded Mary. Just before we break up, I thought I'd mention I'll be introducing my new financial controller to you tomorrow. I'll bring him round to your offices. What's his name again? Asked Peter. Croesus. He was financial controller at Olympus Souls until they closed down. And then he's done a spell as FD with 4 Horsemen. Of course, they're a pretty small outfit. Anyway, you'll meet him tomorrow, as I said. OK, meeting closed. Moses tidied up his tablets and left quickly. Peter, the keys clipped to his belt, jangling noisily, left behind him, promising to get right on with the schism. Mary, dear, do you think Peter really knows how to do a schism? You know what he's like? Charges at things like a lion at a Christian. Well, we'll see, won't he? Honestly, he was so rude to Moses at the start of the meeting. He's getting so insufferable, I'd quite like to see him mess up the schism, even if it is bad for business. He needs taking down a peg, replied Mary. Deflating, you mean? Retorted Saul waspishly, as he left the room.